This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
And welcome to the program. I'm Roby Brock. We appreciate you tuning in. Our first guest today is Representative Jett from the great state of Success, Arkansas, where it looks like your office is pretty successful there, Joe. Good to have you with us.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm here at sunny Success today, and I'm glad to be home for a little bit.
As I have mentioned, you are the chairman of the House Revenue and Tax Committee. You have been instrumental in the formulation of a lot of tax policy in the state for the last several years, particularly this latest round that we may be heading for a special session for. Give me the Cliff's Notes version of what the House leadership, the Senate leadership, and the governor are discussing is in play.
Okay, I think it's probably pretty much thrown out in the press last week or so, but we're talking about taking the top marginal rate from 5.9 down to 5.5, and then after that we're talking about phasing it in from 5.5 to 4.9 or using a trigger mechanism. We're talking about blending the bottom tables with the middle table. We're gonna do a smoothing of the cliffs from the middle table to the top table. Actually, we're talking about doing a corporate income tax cut and doing a $60 tax credit on the bottom side. So a lot of moving parts there.
All right, so let's let me ask you this before we go into each of the different details there. What's the hang up right now in terms of what's preventing a special session from being called? I understand that there is at least some discussion that there's not total agreement on some things.
Well, the disagreement, if you will be on the trigger mechanisms. And we laid this out. I mean, I think we all agreed between the Senate, the House, and then the governor's office. We all agreed to, in principle, everything that I just mentioned. But when we start getting into the trigger mechanism, then you get into like unlawful delegation. What's one General Assembly binding another General Assembly? That's against our Constitution. So we're working on that issue. We're working on the 3/4 votes issue. And then another issue that's out there floating around. There's a litmus test, if you will, on this ARP money. So if you do not do the tax cut right and you start pulling money out of existing funds right now, if you will, then we can actually lose some ARP, and that's worth about $1.2 billion to us. So we have all these issues kind of swirling around, and I think at the end of the day, people saying, well, what's the holdup? I'm like, well, I think we're actually running right on time because really we just started this about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. We come out of session. It was a long, hard session. People want to just check out, take care of their families, take care of their business back home. Then we come into this extended session, and it didn't go to plan like anybody wanted, I don't think. And then so we rolled out of it right into this. So I know it seems like a lot of people out in the public right now that we're dragging our feet or whatever, but I can assure you, that we're working hard on behind the scenes. This is such a huge, aggressive tax cut. The leadership wants to get this thing right. The governor wants to get this thing right. So we're not rushing this thing. We're taking our time. We're trying to, dot our I's, cross our T's, so to speak. And so this is where we find ourselves today.
All right, so let's go with the biggie, the 5.9% top income tax rate down to 5.5%, and then possibly down to 4.9 with some triggers, as you indicated. Do we have the money to do that? I know we have $1 billion surplus, but you got to pay for this on an ongoing basis. Is the revenue situation in the state solid enough to support that 0.4% drop and then maybe go further?
Yeah, for every 10th percent, you're looking at $27 million in change. So when we take it down to 5.5, you're looking at 4/10 drop. But DFA has assured us through their forecasting that the next 2 years we can stand that and stand more and stand the corporate tax cut as well. They feel pretty confident in their numbers. And then we actually hired Moody's Analytics as well on the legislative side to just verify numbers. So we feel good about that. And that's how come we're getting into this trigger in case, because nobody has a crystal ball and see what's going to happen 3, 4, 5 years down the road. So that's what brought the trigger discussion into play here.
Let's talk about the low income tax credit you mentioned earlier. That too, at least the conversation is that there's a trigger mechanism to put that into play. Tell me some details of what that credit is and tell me what the trigger mechanism may or may not be.
Well, right now, I mean, I'm on record saying I'm against the trigger on the bottom side, for several reasons, and that's one of the ongoing discussions between us and the Senate and his office right now. But bottom line is the anybody who makes below $29,999 is going to get a $60 tax credit, and then if you bump above that, for every dollars you make above that, then $5 comes off of it until it zeroes out. But some of the I don't want to say consternation, but some of the negotiating is involving, do we put a trigger on that or not? And my stance right now is not to do that.
You want to give the low income tax cut regardless of what the trigger is versus giving a high income tax cut and making the low income wage earner have to wait for theirs. Accurate?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think it's been any secret about, at one time I want to do away with the whole bottom table. So, but what we found doing away with the bottom table, when we raised minimum wage to $11, that 40-hour work week, that puts everybody that's hitting exactly that into the top bracket on the bottom table. So by doing away with that table, it really doesn't do anybody any good. It's more beneficial to everybody to let us to blend the bottom table with the middle table.
Corporate tax cut, what's being discussed? How big of a corporate tax cut? And do you think that there is majority support for that in at least the House?
I think so. That's one of the things we haven't polled the members yet. I know I spoke with Speaker today, obviously several times, but it's one of the things we're going to come back next week and we're going to talk. We're going to present it to the House members to kind of get a feel for it. But the corporate tax cut is taking. We went from 6.4 to 5.9 this past session ago. So now we're talking about taking it from 5.9 to 4.4. But it's going to, right now, the way we have the bill drafted, and we do have a rough draft of the bill. The way we have the bill drafted is we're going to take it 2 years past the into the next biennium, if you will. So there's going to be a 2-year trailing of the income tax cut, and that will be phased in as well or triggered in. And it'll go from 5.9 to 5.7 to 5.5, and it's about a $38 million hit to the state budget.
Okay. If there is a special session to deal with all this tax reform, with that, which I think people want to do, you could get into opening up the special session for other issues beyond tax reform, critical race
Yes.
theory, abortion issues, perhaps more vaccine legislation like we saw recently in the tail end of the regular session. I guess I just have to ask, is there an appetite for doing all that? Do you think that if you guys go into special session, you open Pandora's box to all of these other issues?
Yes, I think that's nobody has a crystal ball, but I can assure you leadership's got that at length. And I've publicly been on record saying I'm not going to support right now as it is, not unless something comes up that we really got to take address. I'll not be supporting, because it's going to take a 2/3 vote to bring something, that we take something up outside of the governor's cause. So I'm on record out there saying I'll be a no on anything other than what's on the governor's call, not unless something comes up major that we're going to have to deal with.
Representative Jett, there is obviously a proposal out there to, there's been discussion, I haven't seen the proposal yet, to take the Arkansas personal income tax down to 0 by 2030. It's an idea floated by Attorney General Leslie Rutledge. Will we see you endorsing that proposal?
Not unless we find out a way to be able to safeguard our essential services, if you will. So I think what a lot of people does not understand is the state of Arkansas. We spend $22 billion. That's what it takes the state government to operate. But we only take in $6 billion, and we do that through corporate income tax, special use tax, franchise tax, so on and so forth, sales tax. So at $3 billion is income tax. So half of that, the tax-based revenue that we bring in, is income tax. But if you take a look at it, that means there's $16 billion out there that we get from matching grant money or direct payments back from the federal government. So if you take away the $3 billion, and it's not one for one, sort of like, like highways is like, we put up $50 million. Well, the federal government gives us $200 million to maintain our roads in rural Arkansas. So it's not a one for one match. But just say if it is a one for one match, if you take that $3 billion out, essentially that turns into $11 billion. We're cutting half of what it takes for us to operate in the state. So the question is, everybody, a lot of people don't want to pay taxes. At the end of the day, you ask somebody, say, well, do you want to do with your income taxes? And I say, yes. But I would say the question would be, do you want to consolidate schools? Do you want to stop turning back money to cities and counties? Do you want to Medicaid in nursing homes, hospitals closed down? That's going to go away as we know it. There's hundreds, if not thousands of questions that we need to be asking ourselves. Is this the right policy? Actually, I went out and asked DFA about this about two or three months ago. I want to know, if we do away with $3 billion out of the $6 billion that we raise through taxes, what does that equate in federal dollars? This issue is so complicated, DFA could not give me an answer. They just come back to me after about a 2-month period. They say, Representative Jett, we can't give you an answer. That's how complicated this issue is. And there's not a household in the state of Arkansas, and there's not a business in the state of Arkansas that you can cut your revenue stream coming back in and still maintain the level of living standard that you're doing in your household, or a profit loss margin in a business. And for us to say that we're going to cut taxes down to zero without knowing how we're going to pay for this and how we're going to safeguard our essential services in the state, I find to be irresponsible. Now, what I'm not saying is it a lofty goal? Yeah, I think it's a very, very admirable goal to want to cut taxes to zero. Since I've been in General Assembly in the last 10 years, we've actually went from 7% down to 5.9 and trying to take it to 4.9, but we did it in responsible, measured steps as we're working down throughout the years. But just to say blanketly saying we're going to go to zero, and then not knowing the ramifications of how does that affect the federal dollars flowing back into the state. I mean, nobody wants to kick grandma out of the nursing home. Nobody wants to consolidate schools in rural Arkansas to where we're having to put kids on a school bus at 5 o'clock in the morning because we're having to ship them all the way across the county because we're having to consolidate schools. Nobody wants that. And I would argue that most people in my district would gladly pay income tax to have the luxury of the Corning Bobcat kids go to Corning and the Piggott Mohawks go to Mohawk, and so on and so forth.
Could we eliminate the personal income tax steadily and incrementally just through growth revenue if things kind of stayed on the averages that we've been seeing for the last, 6 to 10 years? Now, that might take another 10 or 15 years to do, but is that doable?
Well, it might be, but, nobody has a crystal ball. And just to say, as long as we keep stair stepping down the way we've been doing it and not having any, we've not had a catastrophic event, economic downturn in the last 10 years, a major one, but as long as we keep stair stepping down, I feel like that's the most responsible way to do it. But just go out there and say, hey, well, I'm going to cut, to zero income taxes, just to be doing it for a political, it just to me, it makes no sense. And I just find it to be irresponsible. Is it a lofty goal? Absolutely. Is it a goal that I like to achieve? Absolutely. But I would not sign on to any proposal going to zero without some type of mechanism to safeguard essential services to the state of Arkansas.
Representative Joe Jett, Arkansas needs you and America needs you, Joe.
I don't know about that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Ask my wife that.
I'll ask her later. So tell Lisa we said hi. All right. Thank you very much.